Welcome to Life Stories, where the people you love most can sometimes be the ones who never truly see you. She sat across from her family, the same people who had dismissed her for decades, laughing as if she were still that quiet girl with some job in publishing. But that night, one Google search would turn the entire table upside down. What happens when the invisible daughter turns out to be the most accomplished person in the room without anyone ever noticing? This is a story about silence, survival, and the complicated hunger for recognition, about the damage of being overlooked and the strength it takes to keep building anyway. Stay with us, because by the end of this story, the way you think about family and what it means to be seen just might change forever. Let's begin. The mahogany table gleamed under the chandelier, polished so meticulously that Aaron Carter could see her own reflection staring back, an image both familiar and foreign. She sat at the far end, just inches from the sideboard, where her mother's crystal collection glistened like trophies she never won. This was supposed to be a celebration, her brother Brandon's engagement, the golden boy's next milestone, another moment to be immortalized in framed photographs and Instagram posts. Aaron was the afterthought, as always. The one who flew in from New York took a taxi from the airport alone and was placed at the edge of the table like decorative garnish, present but unnecessary. Diane Carter, her mother, floated through the dining room in a silk blouse the color of chilled champagne. "Let's not forget the rosemary in the roast," she trilled to the housekeeper. "Brandon loves rosemary." Aaron smiled tightly. Brandon loved a lot of things: success, applause, being seen. But the one thing he never had to fight for was their parents' approval. That was reserved exclusively for him, parceled out in praise and pride, while Aaron was met with polite nods and quick subject changes. "Aaron, dear," Diane called, "try not to bring up politics tonight, will you? Avery's family is very traditional." "I wasn't planning to," Aaron said, her voice calm even. She hadn't brought up anything of significance in years. Avery, the fiancé, tall, poised, with that kind of understated elegance only private school and therapy could buy. They hadn't met before tonight, but Aaron had heard enough. Charity work, fluent in French, the daughter of a cardiac surgeon in Boston, her mother's dream come true. Dinner began with toasts and laughter. Alan, Aaron's father, made a mild joke about Brandon's inability to do his own laundry. Diane recounted the story of Brandon winning his sixth-grade debate with such fervor you'd think he had brokered Middle East peace. Aaron sat in silence, sipping her wine, carving the lamb on her plate with surgical precision. "So, Aaron," Avery said suddenly, turning toward her, "Brandon said you live in Brooklyn? That must be such a vibrant place for a writer." A pause. Aaron's fork hovered midair. Across the table, Diane let out a quick laugh. "Oh, she's not really a writer." "Darling, she works in publishing. Some little magazine, I think." Brandon chuckled awkwardly. "Yeah, I don't even know the name of it." Aaron's fingers tensed around the stem of her wine glass. "Actually," she said, Didn't you used to write those little stories when you were younger?" Diane interjected with a fond smile. "Always in your room, typing away. Such a cute phase." Avery tilted her head. "Sorry, what's your full name again?" "Aaron Carter." Avery pulled out her phone. "Sorry, it's gonna bug me. I swear I've seen your name somewhere." Diane waved a hand dismissively. "You're probably thinking of someone else. Our Aaron isn't famous." But Avery was already typing. Her brow furrowed. She tapped again, then froze. A new silence took the table hostage. Avery's eyes lifted slowly, incredulity spreading across her face. "Oh my God," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're Aaron Carter. The Aaron Carter." "What are you talking about?" Brandon asked, leaning over. Avery turned the screen around. A Penguin Random House author page lit up. Book covers. A headshot. A quote from The New Yorker. A voice so sharp and honest it almost cuts the page. Her book, The Echo Between Us, won the PEN Faulkner. It was all over my grad school syllabus. "You wrote this?" Aaron blinked. "Yes." The room cracked open. Brandon grabbed the phone, scrolling rapidly. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. "Is this real?" Alan leaned in. Diane reached out, snatched the phone from Brandon, staring in disbelief. "This has to be... No, this can't be you," she said. "You never told us anything." "I did," Aaron said quietly. "You just never listened." Diane's mouth opened, then closed. She looked like someone had the floor out from beneath her. "Why would you hide this?" Brandon asked. "This is huge." "I didn't hide it," Aaron said, louder this time. "I mailed you signed copies of both books. I invited you to my first reading in Soho. I called after my second novel hit the Times list. Each time you changed the subject to Brandon's job or Diane's charity luncheons." Alan rubbed his temple, his face pale. I don't remember that." "You wouldn't," Aaron said, "because I was never the one you were looking at." Avery sat stunned. "Your book changed my life. There's a scene where the protagonist begs her family to see her as she really is. I cried reading it. I had no idea it was you, that you were writing about—" "I wasn't writing about you," Aaron said, locking eyes with Diane, "but I was writing from somewhere real." Silence again, thick, raw. Then Diane, her voice suddenly small, asked, "If you're so successful, why haven't we heard about you?" Aaron didn't flinch, "Because you never wanted to." She stood up slowly, heart pounding in her ears. "I've spent my whole life shrinking myself so this family wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I became someone out there, someone who mattered while being no one in this house." Brandon looked stricken. "I didn't know." "I believe you," Aaron said, "but now you do." Avery reached for her hand. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "You didn't do anything wrong," Aaron said, managing a smile. "Actually, you did me a favor." "Have you ever been silenced in a room that should have been yours? What would you do if the truth you buried was suddenly broadcast to the people who ignored it?" The dinner table had always been her stage of invisibility. Tonight, it became her reckoning. In part 2, discover what happens when power shifts and the past refuses to stay buried. Avery's words hung in the air like smoke. "Your book changed my life." It should have been a moment of quiet pride of finally being seen. Instead, Aaron felt hollowed out, exposed. She could feel their eyes on her. Brandon's disbelief, Alan's confusion, Diane's silent unraveling. For years, she had imagined this revelation, scripted it in her head during sleepless nights after award ceremonies, at book launches where strangers embraced her words while her own family remained willfully ignorant. But nothing in her imagination prepared her for the truth of this moment, how grief can coexist with vindication. Diane stood abruptly. "Excuse me," she said, voice clipped. She gathered the untouched plates in silence, her carefully curated smile now absent. Alan made a move to follow her, then stopped himself, as if unsure which side he was supposed to take. Brandon looked lost, almost childlike, and Aaron hated how satisfying that was. "I didn't mean to cause a scene," Avery whispered, leaning toward Aaron. "I thought I was helping." "You were," Aaron said, though her voice cracked. "You just didn't know how much it would cost." Alan cleared his throat. "Aaron, would you mind staying after dinner? Just for a bit. I'd like to talk." She nodded. The room was too small now, too heavy with things left unsaid. She needed air. In the hallway, Aaron passed the familiar gallery wall, the shrine to Brandon. His kindergarten graduation photo, his baseball MVP award, his firm's Christmas party with Diane beaming beside him. She stopped in front of the empty space between two frames. Once, when she was 14, her school newspaper advisor had submitted her editorial to a national student contest without telling her. She won. Her face had been on a local TV segment. Diane had recorded over it with a cooking show. She was still standing there when Brandon joined her. "I'm sorry," he said. "I mean it. I didn't know." "I know," she said. "You weren't supposed to." "I always thought you liked being out of the spotlight." "I liked not being drowned in it," Aaron said, then paused. "But I didn't like being invisible." They stood quietly for a moment. Then Brandon said something unexpected. "Did you write about us? In your books?" Aaron turned her eyes to him. "Would it matter?" He hesitated. "Yeah, I think it would." "I wrote emotional truths," she said finally. "Not character assassinations. No names, no revenge. Just shadows of what it felt like to live in this house." Brandon nodded slowly. "Avery's going to read your books. I think I want to, too." She didn't answer, because wanting to understand was different from actually doing it. She had learned that the hard way. Later that night, after Avery and Brandon had gone upstairs, Alan knocked gently on Aaron's childhood bedroom door. The room looked almost the same, Faded floral wallpaper, a dusty bookshelf still holding copies of outdated YA novels, and in the corner, her old desk. She sat on the bed, cross-legged like a teenager, feeling the years collapse around her. "I found the books," Alan said quietly, stepping in. "The ones you mailed, they were in the guest room closet, still sealed." Erin swallowed hard. "I figured. I read the first one last week. I'm halfway through the second. I didn't tell your mother." "Why not?" He exhaled, sinking into the desk chair. "Because she'd turn it into a referendum. Make it about her. Or worse, pretend it didn't matter." Erin looked at him, surprised by the edge in his voice. "She always wanted perfection," Alan said. "One perfect child, one perfect narrative. I thought if I didn't push back, things would be peaceful." "I didn't realize how much silence can wound." Erin's voice was quiet. "You didn't protect me." "I know." The admission settled in the air, soft and devastating. "But I'm here now," he said, "and I want to know more about your life, your work, who you really are." "You sure it's not too late?" Erin asked. Alan didn't hesitate. "It's only too late if you say it is." For a moment, they just sat in the quiet of her old room. Then Erin reached under the bed and pulled out a weathered box. Inside were old notebooks, short stories, rejection letters, and one yellowing newspaper clipping. "Local teen wins National Essay Prize." Alan picked it up with trembling fingers. "I kept it," she said, "even after you taped over the interview." He looked up, shame etched into every line of his face. "I wish I'd fought harder." Erin didn't reply. She didn't need to. The box between them spoke louder than either of them could. Downstairs, the dishwasher hummed. Somewhere, Diane was likely pouring herself a second glass of wine, composing a story in her head to tell her friends that didn't include what really happened at the dinner table. Erin knew that rewriting reality was her mother's specialty. But this time, the story wouldn't be hers to tell. Have you ever confronted someone who saw only one version of you, only to realize they never truly looked at all? When silence becomes too loud to ignore, the real reckoning begins. And in the next part, a family secret threatens to undo everything Erin thought she knew. The engagement party was set beneath a canopy of fairy lights in the Carters' backyard, the kind of elegant, curated event Diane had always excelled at hosting. Waiters in crisp black uniforms weaved through the crowd carrying trays of Prosecco and goat cheese tartlets. A jazz trio played something low and graceful. Everything was perfect, visually at least. Erin arrived early at Diane's request, and even that felt like a shift in the weather. She wore a navy dress and low heels, her hair pinned back, not for their approval, but because she wanted to feel composed. Inside the house, she found Diane by the kitchen island, directing the caterers. Her mother turned as Erin entered, her mouth moving as if rehearsing words before speaking them aloud. "You look lovely," Diane said. "I like the dress." "Thank you," Erin replied, carefully neutral. There was a pause. Diane glanced down at a seating chart, then back up. "You're at table 1, of course, with us and Avery's parents." A beat. "And thank you," she added, almost inaudibly, "for agreeing to read tonight." Erin blinked. "You're sure?" "I'm trying," Diane said softly. "That's what you asked for, isn't it? Not perfection, just effort. And now, at last, a hint of it." As guests arrived, Erin stayed close to Avery, who was radiant and gracious as ever, introducing Erin to a circle of friends and family. Most had read her work, some even taught it in their classrooms. One guest, a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, clutched Erin's hand and said, "Your novel saved my daughter's life. She thought she was invisible. Your words gave her language for what she was feeling." It undid something in Erin, that sentence. She nodded, too moved to speak. Later, when the sun dipped behind the trees and the garden glowed amber, Brandon took the microphone. He thanked everyone, said loving things about Avery, cracked a joke about proposing on a boat while secretly terrified of water. Then, before sitting down, he smiled at Erin. "My sister has spent most of her life telling stories," he said. "Tonight, I hope she'll share one with you." Applause and silence. Erin stood at the little podium near the hydrangeas, her hands calm, her heart steady in its vulnerability. She looked out at the sea of faces, her family now scattered among admirers, strangers who knew her better than those she shared blood with. And then her gaze caught Diane's. Her mother's lips were pressed into a tight line, her fingers curled around a glass of wine, but her eyes were different. Not soft, not apologetic, but listening. Erin read a scene from her upcoming book. It was about two sisters, one who chased approval and one who fled it, meeting after years of silence. It wasn't autobiographical in plot, but emotionally, it was all bone-deep truth. When she finished, there was a stillness before the applause, like the collective breath of a room holding something sacred. Afterward, people lined up to speak with her. Her father, for once, beamed without reservation. Diane approached slowly, a second glass of wine still in her hand. That part you read, the scene with the wedding invitation, and the silence afterward, was that meant to be about us? Erin didn't lie. Not directly, but you see yourself in it, don't you? Diane nodded once, lips trembling. You have every right to be angry. I'm not angry, Erin said. Not anymore. Diane lowered her voice. There's something you should know. Her eyes flickered to Brandon, to Alan, then back. You remember that writing contest you won in 8th grade, the one where you were supposed to fly to Chicago to read your story? Erin stiffened. Yes. I told you we couldn't afford the slip, that it clashed with Brandon's regional finals. You did. Diane's voice cracked. That wasn't true. Your father had offered to stay with Brandon. I said no. I didn't want you to go alone. I told myself you weren't ready, that it was just one story. But the truth is, I was afraid that you'd go out there and prove me wrong, that you were more than what I could control. The admission hit Erin harder than she expected. For so long, she'd imagined her mother's dismissiveness as rooted in indifference. She never considered fear. Diane took a shaky breath. I didn't know how to raise someone I didn't understand, she said. You were so unlike me. You didn't care about appearances, about what people thought. I thought, if I kept you small, maybe I could keep you close. But I see now, I made you disappear. Erin said nothing. There were no words big enough to fix the past. But perhaps this was something else, not repair, but recognition. Do you want the truth, Mom? She asked quietly. You did hurt me, for years, but you also taught me something I never thanked you for. Diane looked at her, startled. You taught me what not to be, and that lesson, it shaped everything I became. Diane flinched, but then she nodded, slowly. I deserved that. Erin exhaled. The ache was still there, but the weight had shifted. That night, when she returned to her apartment in Brooklyn, Erin found a package waiting at her door. It was from Alan. Inside were 3 books, her books, but newly purchased. Each one was signed not by her, but by him. A note tucked inside read, I gave these to my golf club. I'm sorry it took me this long to be proud out loud. Weeks later, she received a group photo from Diane's book club, middle-aged women sipping rosé, holding up worn copies of The Echo Between Us. Diane stood in the center, her expression unreadable, but the book was in her hands. Erin sat at her desk, staring at the photo. Then she turned back to her manuscript, the cursor blinking beside a line she had just rewritten. Sometimes healing doesn't look like a hug. Sometimes it looks like showing up awkward and late, but still showing up. Sometimes being seen means letting others feel the shame of having ignored you. And sometimes the most radical thing you can do is not to disappear, but to stay and let the truth finally echo. What did this story make you feel about family, identity, and being truly seen for who you are? Comment 100 if this story resonated with you and tell us. What country are you watching from? Share this video with someone who's ever been underestimated. Thank you for watching Life Stories.